pull on that jersey, you represent yourself and your teammates. And a name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. Get that through your head.
And here we go.
And it is no good. He missed it. Are you kidding me? The season can't end like that.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Some goofball in a hat and a red shirt. Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs to the 50. He runs to the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms. Bare-chested. Somebody stop that man.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the program, otherwise known as NETMA. I am the host, Tyler FALK. This is the final official show for the preseason before we get to the convention on Monday, which will also coincide with the opening day of the Season 19 of the Simulation Football League. Glad to have you here on this Thursday edition of the program. We've got some fantastic people that have jumped onto the show as well to talk their Season 19 predictions. You already saw my power rankings on Tuesday. You saw my predictions yesterday. Well, today, you guys get to be the start of the show. You guys get to talk all about your predictions. And even if you're not on the show and submitted a predictions page into the NETMA server Discord, or NETMA server in Discord, link to which is down below in the description, you're going to be on the show too, whether you like it or not. So all your prediction will be made for the entirety of the SFL to see. So let's go ahead and get to who's all jumped on to say hello. And we start off with the general manager and what is it? Owner of Swamp Talk, editor of Swamp Talk, Mr. Ross Napoli. What have you got there for us today, Ross?
I would say thanks for having me on, Tyler. Yeah, I would say editor of Swamp Talk.
There we go. What else is going on in Ross's life today?
Not much. I know that there was some, contentious responses to some of my predictions. So that's why I reached out to you and said it would be a good idea to come on and let people know exactly what went into the predictions. And I see a lot of people have put them out there. So I'm looking forward to getting my side as to why I predicted what I did.
There we go. And we'll get to that and a bunch of other people's more here in just a second. Speaking of which, let's go from one general manager to another. It's the general manager from Las Vegas. He's also a broadcaster. Justin Reside joins the program. Justin, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tyler. I'm glad to be back on NETMA.
Glad to have you here. Anything going on we should know about before we get Season 19 rolling?
A lot of quietness over in Vegas. I think John Bond is ready to go and ready to roll for us. So
there we go. All right. Thank you, Justin, for being on the show. All right. Let's go over to north of the border then. And we head down over to Vancouver to say hello to another fellow broadcaster and to, well, the agent I'm calling some of these folks. I'm calling this man the agent of Mr. Kilian. It's Brett Solberg. Brett, welcome back to the program.
Oh boy, he's scraping at the bottom of the barrel and getting me here, but I'm glad to be here, and I can't wait to be proved wrong by both Ross and Justin on how my predictions are so ridiculous. But nonetheless, I'm ready for all this.
There we go. Any good Canadian whiskey or what's the choice to drink for Mr. Brett Solberg?
I had a strawberry cream frappuccino earlier because it was gifted to me from work, but right now just water.
There we go. Water is always good. Stay hydrated, friends. Thank you, Brett, for being on the program. And now let's go to the Panhandle, where the head of social media joins us from the Florida Storm. He also plays linebacker there for the Storm. Stephen Black joins the program once again. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tyler. It's been quite a while. In fact, I don't think I've even been on the show since before I got signed to the Florida Storm. So it's good to be back. Had to dust off the headset.
There we go. I think we might have talked once before, back when you were still in the minors. Is that correct?
I think we did. I was on here a couple times while I was in the minors, and I haven't been on since because, well, life duty calls.
There we go. Well, thank you, Mr. Black, for being back on the show. So, gentlemen, let's get into it, shall we? And Ross, we'll start with you. Again, you've gotten blown up in your DMs, and I'm sure a lot of these folks have for some of these predictions. But Ross, let's start with you. Let's talk some divisions and why you decided to. Well, as I'm looking down the order here, you haven't even given Motor City a chance this upcoming season.
Yeah, and it's one of the ones I've gotten a lot of, I would say, feedback on, and it's nothing personal to anybody over there. As I said in your server, I have friends over there. I root for those guys. I like the owners. I like what's going on over there. I just look at these predictions and I say to myself, the division that they were put in, the schedule that they have, and the amount of low-valued players that are on that team, I just can't see where they're going to be able to pull one out over anybody. It's not a knock on anybody over there. The coaches are good guys. But when you're going out there with two generic defensive linemen to start with, your DT1 and your DE1 are both going to line up on the same line of scrimmage. So what team is not just going to run to the generic side of the line? They only have two linebackers. They have exactly 5 defensive backs. So when people come out in 5 wide and you want to go into a dime and you need that 6 back, you're putting generics on the field. Quarterback, very low valued quarterback because of what they're building over there. A lower valued running back that needs some tweaking with that build. I'm not saying these guys are going to get blown out every week. I wouldn't be surprised if they hang tough with some people, but I just can't see them pulling anything out over anybody. But if those guys can hang in there and do a solid season of progression, I could see them make a really big jump in progress going into season 20. But season 19, I don't see a team on that schedule that I say, with the offense that they're going to run and the low-valued players they have, I can't see one team on their schedule where I say, yes, they're going to win that game.
Ross, do you have any other divisions you want to touch before we move on?
Yeah, I would say that I think the tightest division in my predictions is going to be the Central, where I have every one of them finishing over 500. I do think that Sioux Falls comes out on top there, but Tulsa and Indy, I have, with the build of those rosters and knowing the coaches over there, I have them both winning 8 games apiece, and I have another expansion team, the Minnesota Legend, finishing above 500 at 7-5, but actually missing the playoffs there, which we'll touch base a little bit later. So I definitely think that's going to be the best division record-wise for everybody in the division, but not every one of those teams are going to make the playoffs.
Very interesting. I'm just taking a look at the East Division, a division. I had us doing that similar feat where you have the Central going above 500. I have the East going above 500 in my predictions, but you're predicting a little bit of a drop-off for Jacksonville. So a very interesting take after they went 7-5 last season. All right, let's get back to Mr. Brett Solberg. And Brett, you have a very fantastic, or should I say fantabulous name for your predictions, sir. Let's talk about your predictions.
Yeah, because Yeah, I put fantabulous because that's literally the title of my CCRT sheet. But we'll say it's fantabulous. A lot of it, especially going down to the later weeks, became a lot more difficult as to like who's going to come up top, come and win these games over other opponents. But I do think that the one thing for sure that there's two things that are for sure that are be guaranteed, and that's going to be, I think, Baltimore and Vancouver. I think both of us will get to those double-digit win categories again this season, just because there's not a lot of change in Baltimore's roster. They've retained most of their roster, if I'm not mistaken, and they look just like they did last season, and that ended up having a 10-2 record. Yeah, the only addition that they got was a second tight end in DJ Bandit, and that's a wonderful coup from Atlanta. And then seeing us in Vancouver, I know a lot of us are a lot of people are kind of docking on the fact that Christian Brown is a little bit lower of a value quarterback. But I think back to my days in, I want to say it was season 12 or season 13, where we had a bronze level quarterback in the name of Mark Biddix, and we still finished 8-4 that season. So I think we'll still have that 10-win column. But a lot of it, it's going to be very muddy down in that middle of the field, and I think there is a possibility that a team either 7-5 and 6-6 or 6-6 won't make the playoffs.
Couple of interesting selections. You have, it seems like I've seen a lot of this where Florida and Jacksonville get a little bit of slack cut off. I don't think there's a huge gap in pressure. I know it's going to be a tight division, and I'm a little happy to see you pick Louisiana going 10-2. But let's talk the West Division for a second. Las Vegas and Arizona tying in the West Division, and Las Vegas taking it on tiebreaker. At least that's how you have it. Talk us through the decision-making process for Las Vegas.
Yeah, we can take San Diego out of the mix just because we can all agree having three maybe soon to be generic linebackers along with Kratos Maximus, it's not going to be a good season for them, but they're going to try their hardest and their damnedest. They're going to keep it close with these games. And Denver, I think they're still one step away from being a contending team, and it might be a little bit of a step back, but they're on their way. But Arizona and Las Vegas, they're going to duke it out like they did last season. And this time I feel like Las Vegas, just looking at the roster shakeup this time and getting guys like DJ Majesty and Jared Crow from Queen City to bolster that defense, I think is going to make a big difference. We all know how Joseph Green and the wide receiving core plays in Las Vegas. So they're gonna be high offensive power with a little bit of sprinkling of Scott Johnson on the side running the football. But that defense, I think this season has definitely improved a lot more than a lot of people think. So I think it's going to be a duke it out, brawl it out scenario between Las Vegas and Arizona, with Las Vegas just eking it out. And I think it's going to be by strength of victory.
Well, thank you, Brett. We'll get back to your predictions here in just a moment. Let's keep it rolling with Justin Reside. Justin, what do you see for the divisions or final standings for the season 19 of the SFL?
Yeah, I see it as very competitive, but I think when you see, like, when I picked San Diego to 0-12, it's like that, because of it's Molnix and that defensive generic. You see San Diego with a lot of generics except for Molnix and all that stuff, and it's like it's like San Diego's going to have the hardest road here heading into the regular season, heading into the season, going and missing the playoffs by a whole lot of things in here and there. And you have other teams that could be big and large, fight for the playoff spots that are available.
I think you mean Kratos Maximus there for San
Diego. Kratos. Yeah, Kratos. Sorry.
Taking a look at it, it looks pretty similar to a lot of other people's. The only team I see, I think you have either really fallen in love with what Motor City's trying to do, or I don't know if you realize what's happening over there, but Justin has Motor City going 8-4. Justin, talk us through Motor City's game plan in your eyes.
Yeah, I kind of like the, slowing, there are 3 tight ends that's going to start slow and steady, but then it's going to hit off like a rocket because even though you have a low value quarterback in Motor City, it's like, you're going to have good things going to happen. You're going to have probably a slow start, and then once that what you call it, that offense gets clicking, it's going to be good for Motor City.
Well, let's just go and work on Motor City's schedule for a second. So you have them taking on Tulsa, beating Tulsa, taking on Queen City, defeating Queen City. Let's just take a look at these wins here. Tulsa, Queen City, London, Minnesota, Indy, LA, Canton, and then a huge stretch at the end where they're losing, and then they finally beat London again. You think this is really interesting. You have them beating London twice, a pass-heavy team, though we do know that the franchise in Motor City, originally known as St. Louis, does have a pretty good defense. But let's break that down for me, just a little bit more in detail now that we take a look at their schedule as a whole.
Yeah, I think to me this schedule is pretty much, the way I predicted it is good because I like that kind of schedule. You have, where it's like a lot, you have a losing streak and then a bit huge a streak of wins coming back and forth. It's like it's gonna be me. It's like that's probably what Colin makes adjustments in the playbook every week, and Andrew fixing the plays every week, and then you might have a folder with the wrong playbook play, and then you just fix it. That's what my thinking is.
Okay.
But just the playbook every week.
Okay, very interesting take. One of the very few people I've seen be this high on Motor City, and that's why predictions are fun, because you don't always have a similar prediction to somebody else. One guy's thinking, or a majority of people are thinking one way, the other are thinking another way. And Justin, hats off to you for being ambitious out there. And if Motor City does go 8-4 and shock the world, I think you'd be onto something. You would have believed into them far more than anyone outside the organization, or a majority of the people outside of the organization do believe. So hats off to you, my friend. Okay, Stephen Black, let's bring you back here into the program, and let's get into your 2 different styles of predictions. You have an unbiased version and a biased version. Which one do you want to talk about first?
I don't think I want to tick anybody off yet, so let's go with the unbiased version.
The unbiased version. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk about those predictions, shall we? Let's start with the divisions or final records.
Okay. Well, in terms of division and final record, I'm expecting a lot of teams who were in the playoffs last year to either stay where they are or get better from last year. That's why, of course, I've got Baltimore winning the Atlantic, although Charleston's not going to fall too far behind them. The North's probably going to be where the most interesting piece of thing is, because I know some people have been commenting about drinking the Canton Kool-Aid. I happen to be one of them. I think they just edge out London in terms of the division. The South, I took a page out of your book immediately. I do have Mexico City winning that division, but Lone Star is going to get very close to doing it. The Central, I think the expansion teams are going to do very well. 6-6 record for each one of them, but I do have Sioux Falls taking that division again. Arizona will reclaim the West, and of course we've got Vancouver. I think it's Vancouver's division to lose in terms of the Pacific, and then the East. I don't think a single team in that East division is going to go lower than 500. That is the most stacked division in the SFL, in my own personal opinion.
You and me both. I think that's not only one of the most the division with the most style of pedigree all clumped up into one division, but a division that's going to do well this season. So I'm right there with you. As far as I'm taking a look at this unbiased version of these predictions, not a whole lot of no two big surprises, except maybe the fact that Charleston's going 10-2. Tell us a little bit about Charleston.
So in terms of Charleston, with them being in their division last week, I know how good they absolutely could have been, and I know they lost some key pieces this offseason, but they almost immediately replaced the majority of them, and that defense has been very good, and I think it's still going to continue to be good. And with the schedule they have, I don't see a lot of days that Charleston loses. In fact, I think the only two losses I've gotten to are literally the two teams that are going to be ahead of them in seeding, which is going to be Vancouver and Baltimore. Or every other game, I think is either going to be very close or it's Charleston's to lose. That's just my opinion on that.
Very nice. And we'll probably get to those hot takes, aka biased version, at the end of the show. How about that, Steven?
How about that?
All right. Well, we've talked about final standings. Let's talk about playoffs. Playoffs. We're already talking about playoffs and it's the preseason. Well, let's talk playoffs, shall we? Brett, we'll start with you, and we'll go to your last four teams in, first four out in that regard. So, Brett, your teams again are as follows. You have chosen to go with Atlanta, Queen City, Carolina, and Los Angeles, and Indianapolis as the last four teams that are on the outside looking in. You've got Atlanta, Sioux Falls, Charleston, Florida making the playoffs. Talk us through those tie breaks that went through your head.
So again, as I kind of stated prior, it's going to be extremely muddy when it comes to, I would say, even from the 8th seed to the 20th seed. I think that's going to be a myriad of 7-5s, 6-6s, and 5-7s. We might see a couple 5-7s like I did with Sioux Falls, and I think they're going to be that one team that could possibly make the playoffs and kind of swing that record their own way. I have them at 5-7 right now, but I have them going as last four teams in the playoffs, kind of as an insurance policy, because Sioux Falls, I feel, in second halves of the last two seasons have been sneaky deadly. And it comes with just their overall roster shakeup, and it doesn't matter who leaves and who comes in. Marcus Duncan, I think he's going to have a fantastic rookie season. I have him in my mind as possibly one of the shortlist members of Rookie of the Year heading into this. But you can't go wrong with Julian Tyree and that wide receiving core it keeps improving every season, it feels like. Going forward to Atlanta, you can't knock Atlanta down. They could have an off season, but being in this league for 5 years now, a full 10 seasons, heading into my 11th, it always seems like Atlanta is literally that bug you can't stomp out no matter what. They always come back and rise to the occasion. So I feel like they're going to go into the playoffs. And then Charleston and Florida are kind of those same teams where they're already established big teams. Charleston, that defensive juggernaut, and then Florida, Charlie Boletsky. That's all I got to say about that. In terms of out of playoffs, and it becomes very interesting, to see teams like Queen City just missing. I think Carolina just misses by strength of victory, because I don't really have them winning against big opponents, like really only LA, Portland, Seattle, Minnesota. Those are the teams that I see them winning against. Will have those low victory markers, as well as Los Angeles. I think they're going to be out due to strength of victory. And I kind of put Indianapolis there kind of as just a flyer that could possibly be that one team. I think they are going to be the best expansion team out of that list. And I'll go into that later in terms of expansion teams when we go into hot takes. But yeah, those are the 8 that I see that are going to be in that playoff bubble.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. And let's go ahead and move on to Ross. Let's get you back on the line, and let's talk about who you have going into the playoffs and maybe who's just missing out on said playoffs. All right?
Yeah, I got my takes here. Actually, I just do want to correct one thing, Tyler. As I realized when we were talking in the beginning and I was talking about Motor City, when I was talking about the defense, I had the wrong roster up in front of me. That was why I had Seattle going 1-11 as far as the defensive deficiencies I was talking about. I still feel that Motor City is going to struggle on the offensive side of the ball. But as far as the breakdown of the roster on the defensive side, I was actually looking at the Seattle defense. So I just wanted to correct that for anybody out there who was looking at what I was saying when we were talking about Motor City. The roster makeup was a little bit different. As far as the playoff teams go, one thing that I want to note that I don't know if anybody noticed about mine was I don't have anybody going 500. I have 15 teams at 7-5 or more, or everybody else is then at least 5-7 or less. So the teams that don't make the playoffs are actually going to be 7-5 teams. So that's one of the things that when I was breaking this down, I think the schedule kind of balances out where as we all kind of rank the teams that we feel are the weaker teams, they all seem to play the teams that are a lot better. So I think it's going to allow this to be the first time that we don't have a 500 team and that there will be above 500 teams to miss the playoffs. So my last teams in the playoffs are Tulsa, Indianapolis, Charleston, and Atlanta. And my 4 that just miss are Lone Star, Minnesota, Los Angeles, and Houston.
Very interesting. After Lone Star gets to the championship game, maybe they do take a tumble. Maybe they do fall back. All is yet to be determined, yet to be seen in season 19. So, very, very, very interesting indeed. All right, as I try and figure out my slides, let's go ahead and bring in Stephen Black one more time. Stephen, we'll go back to your unbiased sheet, as we like to call it, and you can tell us your playoff teams for season 19.
So, as I mentioned before, a lot of the teams that were in the playoffs last year are going to be making a return. That's why, of course, all the division winners are in. And then, of course, the last 4 teams in, as you see, I've got Charleston, Jacksonville, London, and the scary thing about it is with Louisiana and Charleston both being 10-2, the fact that they would be playing each other in the wildcard game is insane, despite not winning the division. Of course, you've got Jacksonville, London, and Lone Star making it to the playoffs, which actually leads into my little hot take that I have here. It will finally take more than 6 wins to make the playoffs. That's why the last 4 teams out are, ironically enough, 3 6-6 teams with Indy, Minnesota, and Atlanta. And then I have the LA Lycans just missing it with 5-7. So 1 or 2 games this season could absolutely be the difference between making into the playoffs or being one of the last 4 teams out. I think a lot of these teams are going to return to the playoffs, but I'm 100% ready for a couple of teams to surprise me and make it into the playoffs and prove me wrong. And I hope they do.
Absolutely. Okay. And one more time, we'll bring in Justin Reside to talk playoffs. Justin, your take on the playoff teams making it and missing it.
Yeah, it's just my playoff teams. I obviously had a lot of thinking and a lot of blending, and then the whole my version of the Cam 16 scenarios came in, and then all of a sudden, so I had my last 4 teams obviously into the playoff based on my Cam's version of the scenarios: Charleston, Minnesota, Scorpions, all 6-6 teams, and then the first 7 to the first of the last 4 that are 7-5 are in Indianapolis, and then my last 4 San Diego, obviously because I put them at 12-0, they're out, and then not London, Tulsa, and Fort Worth out because of record.
So I think this is a little bit mistaken. So you have London at 3-9. That's under playoff team. We're looking for closer to 500 for playoff teams. So I could see maybe in your 4, maybe Carolina, DC, Canton missing out, Lone Star maybe missing out, and you could even say Arizona or Seattle missing out in that regard. But you have Arizona in, so we'll keep that. So that sounds about right. As far as teams that are definitely out, yeah, you'd be right. San Diego, London, Tulsa, and Fort Worth, according to your predictions, you'd be right there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, let me do a little fixing there.
As we get back to back to everybody in attendance. We're going to talk championship. These are the championship predictions. I have Baltimore, as announced yesterday, as my season 19 SFL champions. Well, as we know with predictions, not everybody agrees that Baltimore is going to three-peat. So, Steven, we'll start with you. Your season 19 SFL champions and maybe who they're playing against in the championship ball game.
So I'll go ahead and drop a huge spoiler alert on this one. Regardless of my unbiased or my biased predictions, my season 19 champions could be none other than, of course, my own Florida Storm. I know we've had a couple of struggles the last couple of seasons, especially with last season being knocked out in the first round for the first time in I believe a while. I do think we've got the pieces to go back to the championship. I like what we've done with our offseason this year. I obviously know with a lot of the other amazing teams in the SFL, this is going to be no easy feat, especially with 4 new teams coming into the league. So anything could possibly happen, but I think we are going to play in the championship game. And my I put this in my unbiased because I do actually want to see this. Which game event or show am I looking forward to? Florida versus Vancouver in the playoffs, because that is my championship game. Florida versus Vancouver for the SFL Season 19 championship.
Okay, so regardless of your decision, like you said, the Storm are going to keep their three-peat success because they're going to stop a team that would three-peat. Very, very interesting, Steve.
Correct.
Very, very interesting. All right. We'll go back to Justin. Justin, your season 19 SFL champion and maybe who they're playing.
I picked Vancouver, and I think they're going to play us, Las Vegas, and they're just going to probably beat us surprisingly, because Andy's been hasn't had the slump of the semifinal bug, and he hasn't gone to the championship game. So this is the year he finally beats that bug. Obviously, bites that bug, gets rid of that bug with a can of bug spray.
Very interesting. As I'm looking at your score one more time, it seems like week 11's a little bit out of kilter. Looks like you've got one too many losses there, and same thing with week 5. But we'll digress. And your official prediction is Vancouver takes the championship over Las Vegas. Very, very interesting indeed. All right. On to Mr. Brett Kilian and his fantabulous. Oh, what was that? We don't need that.
Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, my bad. Let's see. We will not be right back. That can go away. We need to go ahead and get Mr. Brett Solberg back on the line and his fantabulous predictions. Brett, what do you've got in your fantabulous season 19 prediction? Or should I even guess?
Well, it's a homer choice. I don't really have to explain myself all too much because I've been here for 11 seasons, and by God, we will win one of these titles eventually. We will win more than one playoff game. But nonetheless, I think it's going to be a very interesting playoff scenario where we get to perhaps semifinal action that doesn't see Baltimore in it. I have them ousted in the quarterfinals by one of the other division leader teams, which I can't remember if I put London or Tulsa as the one division winner that's going to surprise everyone and beat Baltimore in that quarterfinal game. In terms of who our opponent's going to be, I think it's poetic in saying that it's going to be Vancouver and Mexico City. I've always loved Mexico City. They're always a team that we've always had probably the best games on the docket every time we've played each other. And there is a little bit of that, nostalgic rivalry that I have. And it goes back to season 9, where I've always stated that Cade Stevens was in bounds in that overtime game against them. But I think it's going to be poetic. In our first championship appearance, we're going to face Mexico City, and we're going to exercise our demons by beating them and winning the title.
I apologize for the folks at home. Something just popped up, and I didn't realize it was going to pop up there. So Vancouver, Mr. Brett Solberg, over Mexico City in the championship game. Is that correct?
You bet your bottom dollar, sir.
Oh, there we go. All right, Ross Napoli, you joined the program. So, Mr. Napoli, let's get to your prediction in as far as your season 19 championship. Well, matchup and who's winning the season 19 championship.
All right, well, I guess it's going to be surprising to, I guess, a lot of people listening to this that I'm the only one on the panel here that's not going to have his own team playing in the championship. So I will go ahead and be the first here to do that. I think that the championship game is going to be Mexico City and Baltimore. Just because of the success that they've had these past couple of years, I can't pick anybody over Baltimore right now until someone proves they could do it. So Baltimore is my championship pick for a third straight championship, strictly because until we see it happen, we can't say that anybody is better than them. I do agree that some of the teams that we've been talking about here are going to be in the playoffs. And I wouldn't be very surprised if a lot of these predictions were teams that are in the semis. You know, I could expect a team like Florida to go. I do believe Louisiana will be in the mix. Mexico City, Baltimore. But until someone actually beats Baltimore in the playoffs, I'm not going to pick anybody else over them. And I think one thing that a lot of people aren't taking into consideration when they do these predictions is the fact that we didn't have a salary cap go up. So I don't see a lot of people being realistic on some of the teams that have retained most of their players, because that would require lowering a value that they finish the season with, like a lot of teams do. But for even a Baltimore, but teams like London and these other teams that people have going so high, Arizona, virtually wiping away an entire season's worth of progression to still afford, under the same salary cap, an entire roster that you had this season before. So, you know, to me, it's a little tough to say you don't take that into consideration, and yet we have some of these teams making the championship. So I can't put anybody over Baltimore right now until we see it happen.
Okay. Interesting as well. Mr. Ross Napoli, again, not having his own team in the championship game, and sadly, me neither, but the Revolution out. Baltimore wins for a third straight time, equaling the Florida Storm franchise, also known as Alaska. All right, well, let's get to some hot takes, and there's one more person I want to bring in that jumped in late, decided he wanted, maybe defend his team's honor, and that's well and good for a member of the Knights. But he's a friend of the program. He's been on almost as much as he can be. But we welcome back JT Dulany. JT, welcome to the show. You're kind of upset with a certain member here on the panel that has chosen to say a certain Motor City franchise will beat your club twice.
Yes. Justin Reside is doing something here. He is delusional. He is incorrect. He is delusional. There is no way that the Motor City V8s are beating the London Knights, especially twice. Maybe they could pip us in Detroit, but they are certainly not beating us in Queensway. I can guarantee you that.
Elaborate a little bit more. Maybe we get some feedback here from Justin. Justin, you've been called out. Go ahead and defend your pick for Motor City, going 8-4 and taking down London twice.
It's no offense to you, JT, but it's it's just, I don't know, it's like it's how it's new divisions, new everything. It's like, I don't know how. You're gonna have.
Okay. Oh, all right, Justin, answer me this. When has a 3 tight end set ever worked in the SFL for a season?
It kind of not has. I haven't seen it work in the SFL yet.
Okay, so what makes you think it's going to work now?
Probably because it's like nobody has ever seen a three tight end set offense play before. So
Well, I know that our defensive coordinator and our defense is going to be ready for the three tight end set, and we are going to be ready, and we're going to take it right to them. We know what they're going to do. Like they basically telegraphed what their offense is going to be.
Justin, anything to respond to that?
hey, if if Liam and the rest of the crew is ready for that, I welcome it. Prove me wrong. That's all.
Things just got just a little bit spicy here to end out just talking about championship games and just certain picks. Hopefully you had your popcorn ready at a moment's notice, because that was really fun to listen back and forth. But that's the whole idea of predictions, right, folks? We talk about them, we respect each other's position. We might not like what they have to say, we might not like their opinion, but you're perfectly entitled to have said opinion, especially on this show, especially on NETMA. You're more than welcome to share your opinion. And for those of you that say, "Oh, you're talking bad about my team, you're throwing my team under the bus," well, the only way to find out about if your prediction is right is if your team performs well or poorly, and that only happens on game day, right? So yes, you might get a little upset with certain people saying your team's gonna go 2-10, or your team's gonna miss the playoffs, or you're gonna lose the championship game. But just remember, these are predictions. I don't think there's been a single person in the league to correctly guess in this scenario all 168 games of a regular season, and let alone the entire playoffs. So be reasonable, respect their opinion, and when we move forward together as a community, because that's all this is, right? We are one giant community of people and personalities that we don't want anyone to leave, because we enjoy these people and these personalities. So that's my little soapbox spiel I've got for that. But let's go ahead and close out today's show with some hot takes, as we like to do. Ross, we'll go back to you. Your hot take and one final thought on what's going to happen in season 19.
Well, I guess my hot take is going to upset a friend of mine, because I have Arizona winning their division under 500. And due to Arizona winning that division under 500 is why there will be a 7-5 team that doesn't make the playoffs. I think top to bottom, with the changes that have happened in that division, and what I was explaining a little bit before with retaining a roster and having to strip down a lot of value to try to maintain everything, they're returning basically the same team from last season. We saw what that team could do last season. I was very high on Arizona going into last season, coming off of the season that they had before. But they've only done it once. I do believe that it's a weak division, and therefore Arizona will come out on top. So although my friend Eddie Gage is, always predicts his team to go 12-0, I'm sure he does not agree with me that his team is going to go 5-7, let alone win the division under 500. But that would be my hot take for the season, that we will have a under 500 division winner who will make the playoffs, and that'll be the Arizona Scorpions.
There we go. Thank you, Ross. Brett, we move to you, Mr. Solberg, and your hot take and final thoughts before we get into season 19 proper.
All right. So, as you could tell from my comrades' other predictions here, they've held all four expansion teams very highly Canton being one of the teams that you see very often with 7, 8, 9 win seasons coming out of their belt. But not only do we need to stop drinking from that Canton Kool-Aid, we need to stop drinking from the expansion energy brands electrolytes in general. I feel like this season, always in first seasons for expansion teams, and I don't think this is going to be any different. We're not going to see a Vegas Golden Knights situation as we did in the NHL with their first season. I think for all 4 expansion teams, they're going to have their early struggles, and they will bounce back and start to show what kind of team they are coming into the second half of season 19. But I have none of the expansion teams making the playoffs this season. I think this will be the season where they just make their footprint, and then season 20 will be the season where we see some noise. And I think the first team next season, I'm saying it right now for season 20 predictions, the first team getting into the playoffs will be Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay, well that's Southern Canada for those of you that don't know. That's a very interesting pick from you, Brett. Any other final thoughts?
I just can't wait for the whole season to just go through once we get into week 3 and see how much BS that I've been spewing out, and all of a sudden we see Indianapolis at 3-0 and I look like an absolute fool. I'm hoping for both that, and I'm hoping that some of my predictions are right. We'll see what happens.
That would mean they'd have to be London, Canton, and Tulsa. So we'll see what happens. Thank you, Brett. We're gonna skip the order just a little bit. JT, do you have a hot take for us, sir, before we get to Steven and Justin?
I have a hot take, but first of all, I just wanted to say that I want to apologize to Justin for calling him delusional. I probably shouldn't have used that term, but I just don't think a 3 tight end set will work in the SFL. Now, as for my hot take this season, and judging by the who you got that have been coming in, this is a hot take. I think, as much as I love and respect Chad Rowland and everything that he has done for us for the past few seasons in London, I think we head into Indianapolis in week 1 and we go in there all guns blazing, we blow the doors off. Now, I will agree with Ross that expansion teams, we probably shouldn't be hyping them up too much, but I actually think that Canton could surprise a few people. I don't think they're getting 8 or 9 wins, obviously, but I think that a 5-7 or 6-6 would be a success for Canton in particular, especially because they didn't use the draft. And that was a little bit shocking to me that they didn't use the draft. But my biggest hot take of them all is that the London Knights will be playing for the SFL Championship, and the Knights will be squaring off in Queensway against the 9-3 Baltimore Vultures.
So that would mean London would be at worst 9-3 with a tiebreaker over Baltimore. Is that what you're saying there, JT?
Correct.
Very, very interesting indeed. All right, let's get to Justin Reside. Your hot take on season 19 and final thoughts before we get to the regular season.
Well, it's like if I know Andy Hillman, and even though I predicted them to go 12-0, that's not like it's gonna happen. But Andy is gonna finally probably, when we get to the semifinals, get over that hump in the championship. But again, if JT said, I don't if London proves that a 3 tight end set doesn't work, proves me wrong. Obviously you could take the, it's like take it with a grain of salt. It's like, we're gonna see what happens in those two games, and and speaking of expansion teams, I could see maybe both Minnesota and Canton surprising us with maybe a 6-6 or maybe a 7-5 to sneak into the playoff picture. And it's like a lot of pot stirring that's going to have to happen this whole season. That's my hot take for it this year.
There we go. Thank you, Justin. All right, Stephen, we teased it a little bit, but you didn't only come up with just one prediction set. You came up with an unbiased and biased prediction set. So we'll take a look at that at your, well, maybe this could be considered a hot take, but what other hot takes you got besides that? The biased predictions are now on screen.
I will gladly explain. So the unbiased picks, of course, were unrealistic picks, what I think is actually going to happen. The bias is just me not taking any of this seriously and basically putting what I want to hear. In terms of hot takes, I've got two. Ironically enough, they're both listed here. My unbiased pick is that 6-6 is not going to be enough to make the playoffs, but my biased pick is based on everything that I personally know about the SFL. I think there is a very realistic chance that multiple expansion teams are not only going to be successful, but they are going to make the playoffs. As you probably see by this little bias sheet here, I have 3 expansion teams making the playoffs. And for those who do know the history of expansion, yes, I've heard about a certain San Diego Mavericks franchise struggling in their early seasons. But there's the thing, I haven't been here when the expansion system first started like that. So this is a little bit new to me. I think that a lot of the expansion teams have done a very, very good job getting themselves together. And I think they're going to have a lot of success this season. So it is anybody's game as far as I am concerned. And for any of these picks, this of course has nothing to do with any of the front office staff or anything like that. This is just my personal opinion. And I'm clearly going to be wrong on a heck of a lot of this, but let's find out what happens. This was actually very, very fun to do, and good luck to everyone. Seriously.
And that's the whole point of predictions. Let's have some fun. Let's speculate on where everybody's going and how they'll end up at the end of season 19. So thank you to Ross, Brett, Justin, Steven, JT for all jumping on tonight's episode. The final one before we go ahead and head to the convention this weekend, and where all 14 games will be broadcasted live on national TV for the first time in convention history, in SFL convention history. All 14 games covered by the broadcasters from the broadcast team of the SFL. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I can't wait to see so many of you there in Las Vegas at the HyperX Arena at the Luxor Hotel. Can't wait for that. Thanks again to everybody being on the show. If you want to check out everyone's predictions, they're in the NETMA server on Discord, the link to which is down below. For more information about the SFL, visit their website at simulationfl.net. That is also linked down below. And to watch SFL games and highlights, check out the Simulation Football League web or YouTube page. That link is also in the description as well. From all of us here at NETMA, thanks for joining us. We will see you next week after the convention, after week 1 has fully gone by. So until then, everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, ladies and gentlemen.